Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Depressed Dior, and this is Langrisser Mobile Apex Season 7. I think this is Week 4. Um, so I did have a loss prior to this match, so I'll just sum it up with Zerda Breeze procking 3 times in a row, which pretty much kind of shut me down and gave her free reign to kill everything that was a threat to her. And they also had Hein, which allowed even additional mobility with the teleport. I did get to try out Patsier a little bit, and she ended up killing herself on Juggler's Thorns, but even when wounded, she does tons of damage to male characters, or sorry, non-female characters. It's pretty impressive. The only issue, of course, like I mentioned before, is she is short-legged, which, speaking of, none of her, I have yet to see her breeze proc, so yay me. Anyway, so in this match, they opened with banning Rose and Seal, which is kind of the norm, especially with a lot of people that go debuff boxes. What this opponent and my previous opponent also did was they banned Rose and Seal first, and then immediately banned Florentia and Sophia. Pretty much, I think the mindset that both my opponents had was probably Licorice being offense build, which mine isn't. Granted, against like a single target box, that would actually be dangerous, but since most people stick to AoEs, Licorice's passive healing with her terrain and her area heal is usually enough to actually keep people topped off. Anyway, as for our opponent, not too much cancer here. I mean, they do have Rian, they have Ares, they have a decent smattering of assassins, and AoE debuffs, so a little bit of everything. Nothing overly focused in one direction, which is nice. So I get rid of Ares. These first few picks, I was pretty torn on what exactly I wanted to get rid of. I always first pick Hilda if I'm able to. My opponent went after my Tensei Jessica and my Illustrial. They take Hilda, which is fine. A lot of people do not like dealing with Hilda because she can negate crits and she's super tanky. But against magic, she's actually reasonably... she's usually able to be dealt with. Also, if you have characters that can dispel buffs, that actually significantly weakens her, because a lot of her kit revolves around her having a certain number of buffs on her active at a time. So, like I said, I was pretty torn. There's a lot of options here that are dangerous. Illustrial on this map is actually pretty rough, because you can go along the mountains and there's a bunch of trees everywhere. And then, of course, there's Zerda, which my previous match single-handedly wiped me out practically. And then, of course, there's Reen, and then teleports, and since they have Hilda, I had to be careful about Florentia. There's just a lot of things I had to I had to pick my battles. I was like, I need to get rid of Rian, because more than likely my assassins are going to be removed soon, and I have to pick a healer anyway. So, yeah, I went ahead and just got rid of their high magic damage, teleporter, extra action nonsense, and got rid of Rian. So I didn't actually go straight for Licorice immediately, because I figured my opponent was still assuming... Well, actually, sorry, I picked Marielle because I figured they're going to ban my other two healers next. And then after that, I would just pick Licorice, and that pretty much kind of give me coverage as far as healing's concerned. So yeah, like I mentioned, they get rid of Florentia and Sophia. They take their Licorice, but I'm pretty sure it's offense build. Went ahead and got rid of their assassins at this point, because he let me. Grabbed Licorice just in case. Because the worst case scenario is I didn't want Marielle to be stuck on heal mode. They went ahead and banned my Toa. Toa actually was pretty... I actually got to use her guard bypass in the previous match. Just went straight for their Rose and Seal and just one-shot her. It was pretty neat. And they got rid of my Sheltier, though I don't know why. So... Besides that, they kind of left me with pretty decent picks. They left me with Zerda for some reason, and then the only issue is if I do take young Jessica, I don't have a buff for her. At least I don't have an offensive buff for her, unless I take Freya with her. They take Bozel, so you can definitely see they're going for a debuff meta box at this point. I get rid of their extra action healers at this point, and I was hoping that would force them to pick a healer, preferably Rose and CL. They left me with Zerda, so I was completely fine with that, because my opponent's all Clothies, and even if they negate the crits, if I'm attacking their general directly, Zerda can do enough damage, even without the crit. They actually take Bozel, or not Bozel, sorry, they take Juggler, and I could have gotten rid of all of their healers at this point if I really wanted to. But instead I went ahead and got rid of their other AoE and got rid of D-Lit. I didn't want to deal with even more AoE nonsense. So at this point they would either pick Elwyn, which is not a big deal. I can deal with Elwyn, and then Rosenseal will just give them a healer, which is fine by me because that's just one less threat that can actually damage me. I mean, Rosenseal actually does have AoE, not very much, but she does have a little bit, which some people have. I've seen some matches in the Chinese servers do that type of stuff. Anyway, for my last pick, I had to either pick Freya or Young Jessica. Obviously, I don't really need another tank in this case. Everything here is practically AoE, and I just need to. Since I was concerned about the AoE debuffs and all that, I do have area heal on Young Jessica, so I can definitely take advantage of that. They take Rosenseal, which is fine. Alright. Alright, give me 1 second. Alright, so I put a break in just in case, because sometimes when I mess with the speed, it desyncs the audio for some reason. In any case, I went ahead and opened with Zerda, just getting her buffs up. She's not going to really be in range for a little while. Our opponent went faction buff and AoEs, obviously probably the buff Licorice, though not necessary. It's actually not really necessary because Hilda can actually buff Licorice, which was one thing I checked. I frantically opened Langrisser to look up Licorice's factions because I couldn't remember them. I knew it was like Princess Dark and something else. But it is reincarnation, so Hilda can buff her. So yeah, like I said, Bozel, AoEs, and faction buff. Rosenseal full heal. I believe she's also reincarnation, so she can be buffed by Hilda. Hilda got Broken Arrow, which really only affects Zerda. Juggler, standard AoE juggler. Well, sorry, not AoE, but standard juggler with a Triton guard. And then Licorice here is actually a hybrid healer, just Dark Despair, Mass Heal, and Demonic Advent, so a little bit of both as far as AoE is concerned. Obviously one of the key things I had to be careful about for Licorice is whether or not she gets a clock proc or not when she actually goes offense, because if she doesn't, all she's got is Dark Despair, and then she can kind of pseudo do some damage with, you know, Demonic Advent and Mass Heal, but nothing significant. Nothing special about my Zerda. Hellfire Archer is the usual. Mariel's standard. Hilda is standard. I went with War Goddess. I usually just default to that because usually most of my opponents, if it's a ranged attack, it's usually going to be a magic, not physical. So Broken Arrow is less useful. Also, War Goddess can actually apply debuffs if it happens to be a melee strike. Licorice, of course, is full support. Mass Heal, Mass Resist, Mass Protect. So this is actually really useful, especially against an opponent, Licorice, because I can just constantly remove all the terrain. And then we got Young Jessica. I dropped Fireball for Mass Heal and kept Cleanse just in case. She's not going to be doing much damage. She's got no attack buffs. But Cleanse is just in case I need to like dispel some buffs or whatever. Really, she's just going to hang back and help with healing if necessary. Since I have no reliable mobility buffs, I'm pretty safe on my movement. The only thing I have to keep in mind is Juggler, because Juggler will teleport 4 spaces and be annoying. So I do hang back a little bit. I'm kind of just seeing what my opponent's doing as far as movement, and this is all I needed to know. So the key thing about Marielle is if you get her 3C to be guarded, her next attack will have an attack buff and bypass guard. So with this, I can actually get a free hit here. Now, one thing I did make a mistake on, or at least didn't take into consideration, is this map is not the river in the middle. Only parts of it is swamp, and then other parts of it is depths. These little corners here, right next to the bridge. Yeah, the tiles that are adjacent to the bridge are actually depths, which is pretty much water, and then as opposed to swamp. Swamp infantry troops can walk over swamp easily, but they can't go across depths, or at least not as easily. So that is something I didn't really take into consideration when I was moving in. Thankfully, it's not going to make too much of a difference, but it is something that's really annoying. Alright, so yep, Enduring Faith. Alright, Hilda's guarding. This is actually really useful as well because all Hilda had up was essentially her faction buff. So I pretty much wipe out her faction buff and do some pretty good damage. That's with minus 50% damage because we had the whatever her little passive buff is that she starts with. So yeah, like I said, when I moved here and did the extra 2 movement step, that's when I realized that this was depths. It's not a big deal because I can attack Juggler and force Hilda to guard, and then from there, with the extra movement buff, I can pretty much attack anyone that I wanted except for even Rose and Ciel, because I can just walk across the depths then. Anyway, the buff I was talking about, yeah, Commandment. While Commandment is active, her healing's improved, but all of her damage, she has damage reduction, but her damage dealt is reduced by 50%. But even with 50% reduction, I still took over half of Hilda's health. And then once that dropped, I was able to easily one-shot Bozal. Also, what's nice is that first strike also got burnt Hilda's Bloody Revenge passive, so it won't trigger again for another 2 turns. In any case, getting rid of Bozal. Bozal is the one that had the majority of the AoEs. The only AoE that's left is Licorice, and if it doesn't clock proc, then I have nothing to worry about. Also, I guess, yeah, the 3C from Juggler is also an AoE, but that has a cooldown of, what, 10 turns? 8 rounds, yeah. It ain't happening. So, I also remove all of Licorice's buffs in the process. Using that fancy helmet. So at this point, I wanted to try to save Marielle. So the plan here was actually to move in with Zerda and make Juggler make a decision. If Juggler were to go B-Shock on Marielle, it would have killed. But if he went after Marielle, my Zerda would have free reign to kill any of the casters at that point. And if Juggler teleported towards Zerda to lock her down, Marielle would be able to possibly escape. Because no one else can really do much damage to Marielle. I also moved in with the kind of sweeten the deal. I went ahead and moved in with young Jessica as well. To force the choice. So there you go. So at this point, yeah. So unfortunately my opponent got to move first. And it was due after young Jessica. I couldn't guard because she was out of range, which was fine. But young Jessica, like with Bozal gone, I don't need the extra healing. And like I mentioned, she doesn't do very much damage since she's kind of lost everything already. In hindsight, I probably still could have hung back, but if I did, young Jessica would have been even more out of position, and since Bozal's gone, I don't really need the extra healing, so I might as well use her as bait. In any case, Zera's still locked down, unfortunately. She's going to be locked down this majority of this match. But I can now get out of range of Licorice. Yeah, the only threat was Licorice, and I can get out of range by just moving to there. Okay, I was wondering why there was threat there. It's because of the Tenyu headdress proc. But my Enduring Faith cooldown has worn off at this point, so I can easily get out of range even with that extra mobility. So that's what I do. So it's 4-on-4. I still have both my main killers. One of them's locked down, and Marielle is completely out of buffs right now, and all of her stuff's on cooldown. So at this point, it's more or less just trying to pass time. At this point, Licorice goes offense. She also has a Tenyu headdress. Good for her. So it doesn't do a lot of damage, and it puts a bunch of debuffs up and terrain, which is why I was waiting on my Licorice to just do this and heals everybody and gets rid of the terrain. And there was no clock proc, so I have nothing to worry about. So I don't. I guess this was just to do a hit. I don't know what the point of it was. It may have been for the Holy Flash, but since by default Hilda is immune to mobility down, it doesn't really matter. Now this was actually a mistake, I think, because Beast Shock was still active. I'm pretty sure Juggler could have just moved here and attacked Zerda and would have gotten the kill, and that would have definitely changed the flow of the match. I think my opponent didn't notice, or thought there was just a bigger priority. Yeah, I ended up just moving up for some reason, so with that I was actually safe. Because I had to, at this point I was like, my guard mobility is going to go down, I need to protect Zerda, so... the only way I can protect Zerda right now is to move somebody into these trees here, because this is the movement range here, and that'll ensure that the aura from Beast Shock doesn't deal with Hilda. Also, I may be mistaken on how Beast Shock works, but I figured that I was going under that assumption, because usually you try to get into the cross to ensure you guard negate the tank. So Licorice healed just mainly to get more terrain out and possibly some debuffs. Doesn't really do anything because I can just cast my own AoE and get rid of the terrain and heal everybody and get rid of the debuff. Now, one thing to note here, my opponent is ahead in damage because of AoEs, and my opponent is holding the middle. So at this point, yeah, and as you can see, with all the mobility, God, that's some crazy mobility. What happened? Oh, 10U proc. So that's the second mobility proc from that. So yeah, Juggler has just full reign on where to go. I mean, even without it, essentially he's just going to go down here to block me. The center tiles are here, so he's got some full control here. But even with Bloody Revenge, I'm able to take her out. So now it's 3-on-4, but my opponent has the center still, and Mist is closing in. So the biggest issue right now is I'm actually behind, not behind, but Zerda's faction buff is down, so I need to spend around faction buffing, then around putting up her 3C. So I did get rid of all Juggler's remaining buffs, but it didn't really matter because he's in water, so unfortunately I couldn't one-shot him. I also can't push him away because Hilda's aura prevents displacement. But healing up, putting out more terrain. As you can see, my opponent is making every effort to try to block me in at this point. So one thing I'm trying to take advantage of is the fact I have 4 characters, which means I can force him to use up all of his turns. So doing a few hits here and there, not going to do very much damage, like I said. I mean, it's still pretty okay. I mean, got rid of some of the troops. Alright, got all that. And I had one more tile to play with as far as getting Zerda's hide and seek active, which will give her tons of mobility. And Marielle already has the +3 movement from getting rid of the commandment, and so I can actually get into the center tiles and start softening up Hilda. At this point, I'm kind of spreading out because they can only cover so many tiles at once, and Hilda's guard has been reapplied, so I do have 2 range. And cooldown for Beast Shock itself is 5 rounds, so yeah, he's not going to get his abilities back. He reapplies Triton, which is fine, I don't care. It doesn't really matter at this point. I'm just forcing turns to pass at this point. So I actually don't bother with 3C, and I move into attack here. And managed to do some percentage damage, which is really nice. And then with this, I was actually able to get a kill. Hilda's, of course, does have a revive, so we burned through the revive. Of course, Zerda is super vulnerable right now because she's nearly dead. Because that was the broken arrow reflecting damage back at her. But if she chooses to attack Zerida, there's a chance I could get the kill with Marielle, and then it'll just be 2 on 3. And she wouldn't be able to hold the center at that point. In any case, yeah, 86 health left. I'm pretty sure my opponent was pissed. Now I think part of that was I don't think Hilda would have had a. There's a chance she could have critted, but even so, Hilda was negating the crit. Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing was, yeah, I don't really have an explanation. She just couldn't do enough damage. I think the only thing that stands out is her crystal molders are slightly weaker in attack than mine, but even then, yeah, that sucks. But either way, it bought me everything I needed, so I just went ahead and moved in, because now I can just block. Also, one thing I was waiting on was waiting for Rosenseal's 3C to wear off, because while it's active, she has a self-res. Since that is now down, I went ahead and reapplied her 3C. Juggler can't reach. And so my focus here was just to guard Zerida, while constantly cleansing off buffs from Hilda here. It's also forcing the Bloody Revenge to proc. Alright. So at this point I can bypass guard. Rosenseal doesn't have fixed immune, so no Shrine Maidens means I can kill her. And then I can block him in. So he tries Beast Shock because it finally wore off, or refreshed rather. Almost killed her. Even if he got the kill, it wouldn't have made a difference. Just at that point, I had controlled the center. I was actually winning in damage at that point, so my opponent would not have been able to really win. He could have gotten his 3C in, maybe again, because I think it's 8 turns, and I think these battles are like 15 rounds or something like that. But yeah, it was a really good match. I liked it. A lot of back and forth there. As you can see, Marielle did the most damage. It was there coming in second. And then, surprisingly, my tank actually didn't guard very much at all. All the damage was... I just had my own character just soak the damage, essentially. And thanks to the terrain, of course, Licorice's healing was just through the roof here. And of course, their tank actually did work. And most of the damage was done by Juggler, no surprise there. Alright, well, that's it for this week, so I'll see you guys next time.